global threats. I'm thrilled by the fantastic turnout today. It's wonderful to see so many partners in this room and online who have helped stand up the Pandemic Fund and partners who are instrumental in making this fund a success as we implement. We have an all-star lineup of speakers today. So without further ado, I'd like to invite World Bank President Ajay Banga to deliver the opening remarks.
Janet, I think that stool's for you. So. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that. That was easy. That was an easy shot, right? Good evening, everybody. It's an absolute privilege to be with all of you here and to have the opportunity to open what I think is a really important conversation. The need for global health threats just, exists. We know the need to build for them cannot be overstated. Tedros is saying, thank God he's saying that. Although we are still emerging from the COVID pandemic, and by the way, my wife just tested positive today, so trust me, it's real, although I am not positive, Madam Secretary, since I've been hanging out with you. Although I was positive a few months ago, as you remember, we must aggressively be planning and preparing for the next global health crisis. Experts predict that there's more than a 50% chance that another COVID-like pandemic will hit us within the next 20-25 years. What I know is that these risks are actually exacerbated by climate change. And I'm deeply worried that we are not moving forward aggressively enough. Pandemic preparedness continues to suffer from chronic underinvestment, particularly in what people now call the Global South, a term I don't like, but I understand the moniker as it refers to it. The international community has a key role to play, both in bringing additional financing and in incentivizing countries to do more. And the one bright spot is the Pandemic Fund, an innovative component of the International Health Financing Toolkit, a first of its kind, a multilateral platform dedicated to making investments in pandemic preparedness during what I call peacetime. It is designed so that when the battle comes again, and we know it will, we will have the health workforce that can be rapidly deployed in the face of a crisis, laboratories that can quickly ramp up testing, and surge capacity that can be called upon to respond. The Pandemic Fund is doing things differently because it has the flexibility to work through a variety of institutions, complementing efforts, drawing in co-financing, and promoting coordination on the ground. Plus, most importantly, it incentivizes countries to prioritize this agenda and increase their own efforts. I think the World Bank is very proud to have been a part of this whole activity. What makes the fund genuinely impactful is the collaboration with governments, with the WHO, with UN agencies, MDBs, global health initiatives, philanthropies, civil society, Dr. Tedros and the WHO. I think you deserve special thanks for the hard work, the expertise, and the experience that you and your team are contributing to the fund. As does the G20, who championed this initiative with their vision, but also with their generosity. The speed at which this fund has come together to deliver financing is impressive. It's a great example of what we can do when we work together towards a common goal. In less than a year, the Pandemic Fund has raised $2 billion in seed capital. It's awarded the first round of grants to projects that strengthen capacity, but within and across borders, with every dollar catalyzing an additional $6. However, we are still falling short of where we need to be. Joint analysis with the WHO estimates that getting to the right level of preparedness will require an additional $10 billion of international financing annually over the next 5 years, coupled with twice as much in domestic financing. That's daunting. And to fulfill its promise of helping developed countries build resilience to future pandemics, it needs more resources on a sustained basis. This is the moment to scale up those efforts. And Secretary Yellen, who's here, is someone who shares this urgency. She knows all too well the importance of preparing now for the coming storm. Without her, the Pandemic Fund would not have existed. And I'm delighted that she's here to deliver the keynote address for her role in helping to set it up, but also her stubbornness her desire to ensure it comes through. I cannot thank you enough for your leadership, Secretary Erin. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bonga, for your words of support and introduction. And thank you also to Director General Tedros, Minister Sabin, and the Pandemic Fund Secretariat for all you've done to get us here. And hello, everybody. I'm glad to mark this occasion, the one-year anniversary of the Pandemic Fund, with all of you tonight. Over the past few years, COVID-19 has made us confront the tremendous human and economic costs of pandemics. And like with other recent global health events, it underscored the critical gaps in pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. So when the G20 high-level independent panel called for a new financing mechanism to address these gaps in June of 2021, the international community came together and acted. President Biden echoed the panel's call at the Global COVID-19 Summit in September of 2021 and announced an initial U.S. contribution. Then, under the Italian and Indonesian G20 presidencies, finance and health ministries worked to launch the Pandemic Fund in record time. In the years since this launch, the Pandemic Fund has raised nearly $2 billion from 25 countries and 3 philanthropies. And this past July, from its first call for proposals, the Pandemic Fund awarded $338 million. It will leverage an additional $2 billion in co-financing from implementing entities and co-investor countries. Funding will go to 37 countries, including for a project in Zambia that will strengthen early warning systems through integrating public health data into an electronic surveillance and response platform. I saw how important this is firsthand when I visited the new Emergency Operations Center for Monitoring Health Threats in Lusaka in January. Another project supports 12 countries in the Caribbean on regional coordination, including through pandemic simulation exercises. These and the many other approved projects will tangibly improve our collective ability to prevent pandemics and to better withstand those that could still occur. As I've said before, the Pandemic Fund is truly a model for multilateralism. Many countries have worked quickly and effectively to address this global challenge. We should all be proud of what we've done. But I also want to stress now is not the time for complacency. More work is needed to realize the Pandemic Fund's full potential and to strengthen global health capacities. First, we know the Pandemic Fund will need more resources. $10 billion per year over the next 5 years, as called for by the high-level independent panel. The U.S. has already contributed $700 million, and we're requesting an additional $500 million from Congress as part of President Biden's fiscal year 2024 budget. We urge other countries to increase contributions, and we also need to explore more sustainable financing models. I'm glad the board of the Pandemic Fund will focus on that in the coming year. Second, the Pandemic Fund doesn't exist in a vacuum. Its success will depend on the success of broader efforts underway to strengthen the global health and finance architecture. One such effort is our ongoing work to evolve the multilateral development banks so they have the tools to better help countries assess and manage pandemic-related risks among other global challenges. This includes ramping up investments in regional and global projects to address pandemic preparedness and response gaps. It also includes integrating pandemic surveillance and preparedness measures as part of health projects wherever possible, as health security requires a holistic approach. And it includes considering how the MDBs can best complement and catalyze other sources of financing. The United States is also supporting ongoing work in Geneva on the Pandemic Accord and amendments to the international health regulations. And we welcome the work of the G20 Finance Health Task Force to deepen our understanding of the interplay between health and economic shocks. The task force's work to help identify financing gaps and to develop a comprehensive response playbook for pandemics and routine pandemic stress tests will be especially crucial. So again, congratulations to the many of you who have been instrumental in creating and operationalizing the Pandemic Fund. We've accomplished a lot very quickly, but there's much more to do to strengthen the Pandemic Fund and to continue building the global health architecture people around the world need and deserve. COVID-19 destroyed the lives and disrupted the livelihoods of too many. We cannot eliminate the risk of another pandemic, but we can make pandemics less likely and ensure that if they do occur, we're better prepared for them. Thank you all for being here. Our collective work saves lives, preserves livelihoods, and fuels economies. And tonight is a call to recommit ourselves to taking it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary Ellen, for your vision and your leadership. I'd now like to call upon Dr. Tedros, Director General of the WHO, to address us. Dr. Tedros.
Thank you, Priya. I will not joke about you like what Ajay did for you. Your Excellencies, ministers, dear colleagues and friends, it's now, as has been said by Ajay and Yellen, it's already more than a year, almost a year since we started, so happy anniversary. And I hope this pandemic fund will go from strength to strength. And as you also know, it's more than 4 months now since WHO declared an end to COVID-19 as a global health emergency. And as the attention of world leaders moves to other crises, of which there are plenty, we're concerned that the lessons of the pandemic will go unlearned, and the cycle of panic and neglect will repeat. The world was unprepared for the COVID-19 pandemic, and it remains unprepared for the next pandemic. And history teaches us that the next pandemic is a matter of when, not if. Now is the time to invest in preparing for the pandemics of the future and to strengthen the global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. The Pandemic Fund is a critical component of that architecture. WHO is proud to be part of the fund and to provide technical leadership. And I thank the G20 countries. You remember the relay that started in Saudi Arabia and then followed by Italy, Indonesia. I think it's the effort of the three countries that made it happen. And I thank all three countries, plus all G20 countries, for establishing the pandemic fund and all those who have supported it. The task now is to implement the projects funded in the first round, many of which WHO is supporting, and demonstrate their impact. The first round has shown that countries have a real need for this type of funding assistance to support national pandemic preparedness strategies. The demand is huge. For the first round, the fund received 133 applications from over 120 countries, which with requests for financing of over $2 billion US. Given this level of demand, we would like to see an acceleration in disbursement in the second round. And I leave you with three major actions. First, we seek the commitment of all donors to continue to capitalize the pandemic fund in line with investment needs identified by country. Bilateral health programs to coordinate, align, and integrate investments more effectively in support of domestic financing and national plans. And third, we seek the commitment of all donors and countries to build resilience by integrating investments in health security with investments in health systems. And my thanks to Ajay Banga for his partnership, and to Secretary Yellen, which I fully agree with Ajay beyond words in thanking her for her leadership, and all ministers here for your commitment and support for the Pandemic Fund. We look forward to our continued partnership as we build a healthier, safer, fairer world together. And as head of Secretariat, I would also like to use this opportunity to thank Priya and the whole team. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,